Wooden pens make great gifts. Some students choose to sell their pens, and others choose to make one to send overseas to soldiers in Afghanistan. Every year they're very grateful to receive the pens. Okay, I'm going to show you where to get the pen making supplies. This drawer right here has your instruction manuals and your mandrels and your drill bit. So this is where it's at. Make sure you get a manual out when you get ready to build your pen. Over here is a drill bit. This is the only drill bit we can use for pen making. Okay, it has a brad point bit and it has a 7 at the end. That stands for 7 millimeters high speed steel. So make sure you find the right bit. No other bits will work. Down in this drawer are pen blanks. These blanks have already been cut to the right length and right thickness as well. So you can go ahead and use those. Those are free blanks. Over at this cabinet is our Lathe Tools. The top two drawers have a variety of tools. If you choose to purchase some exotic wood or a larger pen blank, you will need to mark off some measurements and then cut that down. So your measurements are going to be 2 1/16 of an inch, and use a square so you can get some nice 90-degree lines on there. And this example has a space in between. You don't have to do that. Alright, now we're going to go over to the bandsaw, and we're using some pliers because the pliers help you maintain your required margin of safety. So if you're not using the pliers, your hands are going to be too close. So please use the pliers. Do not let the pliers touch the blade. Alright, now we're over to the drill press, and it's time to drill the holes. I'm going to show you how to put in the bit real quick if you haven't done that before. This is called a chuck key, and we're going to put that in the drill chuck and loosen the bit here. Here's the bit. I'm going to put it back in now. And a good way to secure this is to go into all three secure points there on the chuck. And this will help keep it nice and tight in the drill chuck. Alright, this is a vise. I put this board down to help keep the blank from falling all the way through. I mark the ends on the blank. Then I make sure that it goes into the notch in the vise. That helps it keep it real vertical and perpendicular to the table there. So I line that up. Make sure you put a C-clamp on the vise. This will help prevent this from moving around while you drill it, and it helps make it safer as well. You don't want to over tighten the vise. If you over tighten the vise, when you drill that big hole in the middle, it will crack your piece. Listen to the machine. If it starts to squeak really loud, you will know that it is too tight and you're going to have a problem. So go on nice and easy. I have this in faster motion, and so you're going to kind of ease down, and then remember to go back up a little bit to get the chips out as well. So this should take a second. You need to give it some time to drill through the blank. It's a pretty long hole you're drilling through, so take your time, and when it's done, you should look something like this. If it's way off, you're going to need to redo it. Alright, it's not a bad idea to sand your blanks. The one on the left was sanded with just hand sandpaper, about 220 grit or even finer. This glue will not come off anything, so please be careful. It's very expensive glue. It's about $7 a bottle. Do not get it on your hands or clothing or tools, anything you don't want it on other than this blank. So we put the little line of glue on the blank, twist it on, help spread the glue, and when you get down close to your fingers, you press it onto a scrap board. Please do not press it onto a nice big board or one that you can tell is pretty decent, or on any machines. We're going to go over to the disc sander, and we're going to make sure it's 90 degrees. Grab a square for that. Going to use a miter gauge here for this, and our goal is to keep our fingers way off to the side, and it is still a small piece, so you're going to have to use some good judgment here. And I'm just going to barely touch the ends, and my goal is to get it just a little bit, the brass just a little shiny, so I know they're flush. If the ends aren't flush, your pen will break. So you can kind of see there, I sanded everything flush. So I sanded the brass just a tiny bit, so not a major deal. Here's some basic lathe safety. Remember to review all these before you get started. Here's our two mandrel types. We have a taper type, and then we have a screw-on type mandrel as well. So for today I'm going to use this one. So you kind of thread it onto the headstock, and you don't need it super tight. You don't need a wrench or anything. You just kind of spin it on there and give it a little hand tight, and you should be good. Alright, so I'm going to insert the blanks now after I waited 5 minutes for the glue to dry. Waiting 5 minutes is super important. If you rush this, your pen blank will never come off the mandrel, and we'll have to grind it off. It wrecks the mandrel sometimes, and usually always wrecks your pen. So I'm going to slide one blank on, and then I'm going to slide a spacer on. In a second, I'm putting my smaller block of wood towards the end. That will be the part where I put the tip of the pen. And now I'm going to one block just got a little smaller, so that's a way to help reduce problems. So I put this little brass nut on the end, tighten it, hand tight, no wrenches or pliers needed. Now it's time to put the tailstock on for support. You cannot turn pens without a tailstock. You need that for support. If you choose not to use the tailstock, you'll bend the mandrel and wreck your pen, and it just doesn't work out. I'm inserting the tool rest about a little bit below center, so it's a little lower than center. I'm making sure that my part spins freely. Now I'm going to get ready to turn it. I'm going to use a round nose tool and a skew tool to do all the turning today. My goal here is to cut from the side, so I'm trying to produce what's called a shear cut. If I'm not seeing chips coming off the workpiece, that means my tool is either really dull or at an incorrect angle. Usually it's an incorrect angle, although a lot of times tools do need to be sharpened between every pen or so. Right there you kind of saw how the tool was actually stopping the pen. It was twisting. This is going to happen a little bit. I might have to speed this up or tighten the brass nut on there. It might just need some more glue, but a lot of times you can work through it like I just did. So I didn't have to stop the lathe at all. I just kind of kept working at it, and it started to cut the way I wanted it to. So I'm trying to form the tip end there on the right, and the side on the left side will be the clip end that the pen clip will be on. And I'm trying to get this pretty thin. I want to get it down to almost the bushings, those little spacers or bushings. And that's really my goal, is to make kind of a delicate pen that will really look nice. If you leave them really bulky, I just don't think they look as nice. And if you do get it too thin, it will break. So you kind of have to be mindful of where you're at. You're going to hit the brass tube if you get too thin. So you got to kind of think about where that would be. So I'm trying to work on the other side now. I'm just moving around. There's no real order you have to do this in. It's kind of all preference. So up to this point I've used a round nose, and I'm going to switch to the skew tool, and you'll kind of see I'll clean it up just a little bit with the skew. Now right here I don't have it at the right angle, so you can kind of see it's not producing any shavings whatsoever. So now you're going to watch in just a second. I'm going to tilt this up a little bit. I'm going to tilt it down on my side, which brings the tip up, and it'll start to cut. So I kind of wanted you to be able to see that. So there you go. It makes a big difference where the tool angle is at. So a lot of first-time lathe people, they don't have the tool at the right angle, and they're not running their hand against the tool rest for a guide. So it's really important to have your hand up against the black tool rest. You don't want to get it so close you pinch your fingers, but it does give you a lot more control over the workpiece and the tool, which is very important. So you kind of see right here, it's not cutting at all because I don't have it at the right angle. So then I bring the angle up a little bit, and it makes a huge difference in how it cuts. So there's kind of where it's looking. I like where this is at right now. I could probably go just a tiny bit thinner, and now it's time for sanding. Sanding's super important. I'm going to remove the tool rest. To do my sanding, if you work up a grit sequence, start at like 100 grit and work your way up to 400 or 500 grit, that really works out good. But if you just start at like 400 or 500 grit, you're not going to get the scratches out. So really important to jump through the sanding sequence. The pens that turn out the nice are the ones that were really sanded well, where the student really took a lot of time to do a good job sanding. So the sanding really should take about as long as the carving. If you've done a good job with the sanding, it will take a little while to get it done. So now we're kind of inspecting the pen. I'm going to try to show you where a couple scratches are. So there's basically just a scratch right here. that I could sand off some more. You have to back down the sequence. I'm not going to get that scratch out very good with 400 grit. I might have to go back down in the sequence. All right, now I'm going to apply this friction polish. It's $25 a bottle, so it's really important that you don't waste any. You're going to put like a dime-sized drop on the paper towel, and you're going to turn the lathe by hand without turning it on first, and you'll slowly apply the finish with this cloth. Don't wrap your fingers around the cloth. You know, you don't want it to become a safety hazard. So I'm just going to really carefully put the finish on, and now I'm going to turn the lathe on full speed. And now I need to add some friction. So I'm going to try to get this nice and warm without, like I said, getting your fingers caught up around the cloth itself. You can put a couple coats of this on. 2 coats is usually enough. And if you've sanded to 500 grit or higher, it's going to produce a really nice sheen. And if you did a lousy job sanding, this isn't going to look nearly as glossy or pretty as this will in just a second. You'll see. So if your pen doesn't look like this, that means you need to go back and sand it a lot better. So, not a bad idea to ask for a checkpoint at this point in your project. Ask me to stop by and see if I've sanded it enough. Even maybe before you start the finish. So now I'm going to take the spacers off. I'm going to put the spacers right back on the mandrel because we lose these a lot, and I can't just go buy these at the hardware store. I have to order them. You're going to pick out the kind of metal you want, and this is on the green toolbox. There's a couple exotic woods if you want. We have more than that as well. And you're going to pick out which kind of metal. Here's the pen press. It's in the green toolbox. It's in the drawer labeled pen press. It has a couple parts. I'm going to start applying the tip of the pen first. And so I'm starting at the tip, and my goal is just to press those 2 parts together. There's a hole inside that white block on the left, and that kind of helps push it, holds it steady while you push it together. So once I get this part pressed together, I'm going to add a very important part. This is the mechanism that controls the depth of the ink cartridge. So a lot of students will wreck their pen here, and there's no way I can help you fix this. So if you push this part in too far, there's nothing we can do about it. So it's really important to look exactly where I'm pushing this into. I'm going to go to the end of the brass there, and I can go just a little bit farther sometimes, but I cannot surpass that dent. Okay, the dent in the silver. So you're going to watch, I'm going to stop just about past the brass, just a tiny bit, and you can kind of see that where that is. I'm going to insert the ink cartridge now and see if it works. So yep, it's good to go. If for some reason your ink cartridge isn't working here, you're either going to have to push the insert in more, or I'm going to have to help you modify the ink cartridge, which I can do. If you're happy with it, you're going to put the ring on it, and then this part will be done. So now time to put together the second part. This will be the part with the clip end on it. This part's a little bit harder. You have to put the spacers in the pen press, and you might have to adjust this a little bit. When I say harder, it usually goes just as good as the other section, but if you let it go in an angle, it can crack your wood piece still, and you're going to be bummed out because you're at the final step. So you kind of inspecting this and see how that turned out. Now you're going to put the 2 pieces together, and you're going to have your finished product. So your next step would be to, if you're going to give this to the soldiers, you're basically going to grab a bag and sign it. So here's the bag and the spot for you to sign it, and you'll put it together in this, and then when we get enough of them, we send them in. So that's something you can do that was really nice. And otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the pen project from start to finish. Once you get good at it, it takes less than half an hour. So that's a pretty quick project, and that's what makes it kind of fun. I like the friction polish because you don't have to wait for that either. A lot of times people's pens break, and here's the reason why they break. You're doing one of these things wrong.